guys, what's up? It's me, Sarah. Welcome back to my channel. And before we get started with today's video, remember to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and without further ado, let's get on with the video. Today's video is going to be my 2025 reading stats video. I'm so excited. I love stats. I love all the charts, and I'm just so excited. So I think we're going to start off with my Storygraph run through, and then I will be showing images on the screen of different graphs that I have created based on stats and things that I've been tracking throughout the year. So let's just get started with my Storygraph overview of my 2025 wrap up. If you guys are wondering why I'm looking off to the side over here, it's because this is where my laptop is and I'm just kind of reading the information off of the screen. So I read 141 books in 2025, which was 45,494 pages. I am so proud of myself. That is so many books and pages. That is probably the most I've ever read in a year. It definitely is in my adult reading and keeping track on different platforms. I may have read more. I don't think I did, but I may have read more when I read picture books or something. But this is definitely the most I've read for full length. Well, a lot of these were also novellas, but I mean, since I've been an adult. Anyways, that's what I'm trying to say. Or since I've tracked on different apps. But my first book of the year was Pucked by Helena Hunting. And I believe I gave that 3.5 stars. And then my last book of the year was Bet You Mine by Madison Colt. I gave that 1.5 stars. I absolutely did not like that book in the slightest. And that was kind of an unfortunate book to end the year on. But we're going to move on down. It says the genres I read the most were romance, then contemporary. I'm not sure what counts for contemporary. If you want to see more, I feel accurate genres, I will be showing you my charts and graphs that I made, because those I think are more accurate, because I have no idea what they consider contemporary, anything with that kind of setting, or a contemporary romance, general fiction, because no way did I read over 50 of those. And then erotica, fantasy, and thriller. I feel that's also wrong. Anyways, this is just what Storygraph says. We will get into what I have tracked later. How many times do I have to say that? But every time I look at this, I'm like, that doesn't seem right. The longest book I read was Hunting Adeline, which was 684 pages. The shortest book I read was Masked by Penny Jackson, which was 24 pages. And that is definitely a big difference. The average length of the books I read was 327 pages, and it took around 3 days to finish each book. The authors I read the most were Elsie Silver with 3 books, Cassie Mint with 2, C.R. Jane with 2, and I'm sure there was others that I read 2 of. Sorry if you can hear all the sirens out there. Something must be going on. But my average star rating for the year was 4.32 stars, which is phenomenal. I think it's always around this. I think the last 2 years, maybe, it was 4.33. And so this year's just a little bit lower, but I feel I always have a pretty good star rating because I read a lot of good books. The month with my highest average rating was April with a 4.56. That is incredible. And it says, turns out May wasn't your favorite month with an average of 4 stars, which 4-star average rating for a month, still fantastic. And then the most pages read was in October. I read 6,340 pages. And I also read the most books in October. According to Storygraph users that shelved the book the most, the most shelved book, was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And the least shelved book was Trick or Tease by Stella. Who was this by? Stella Rowe. And the highest rated book on Storygraph, for the overall rating that I read, is I Don't Wish You Well by Jumada Emile. And that's because this one is not released yet, so there probably haven't been too many ratings. I read the arc of this, and I really liked it. I gave it 4.5 stars. So pretty much what the average star rating was. It says, I explored the works of 111 new authors. which is fantastic. And 86 of the books I read were part of a series. Interesting. I thought that number would have been way higher, to be honest. I feel like I'm so bad at starting series and not continuing. It says you DNF'd 4 books this year. I think I may have DNF'd 1 or 2 more than that, but I didn't track it on my Storygraph because I forgot, but that might be accurate. It's pretty close to accurate. I used to DNF like crazy, but I find I just really, I don't want to jinx anything for 2026, but I feel like I kind of know my reading taste. So 4 DNFs is pretty good. And let me just see. Oh, they're going to show me every single book I read. This could take a while to get through. And I think this is the end. Yes, that is the end of the Storygraph year in review stats. So now we will move on to my stats that I created. Well, not that I created. My charts that I created. Sorry if I seem like a bit all over the place in this video. Hopefully you guys aren't too bothered by that. But for genres, here is, I'm just going to scooch on over so I can put the graphics on the screen here. And these are my genres that I read in 2025. As you can see, 73% of my reads were romance. And this includes any subgenre of romance besides romantasy. And then my next largest category was mystery thriller with 7.1%. Then romantasy with 6.4%. Horror with 5.7%. Sci-fi with 4.3%. And that little like light bluey greeny space, like that section is fantasy. And that little itty bitty sliver of yellow is general fiction. And next you can see the age ranges that I read. 87.9% of my reads were adult, which is definitely, I feel, very reflective of what I read. I used to read a lot of YA in middle grade. As you can see, I read some YA with 10.6%, and then that tiny little green sliver on the pie chart is middle grade. I've definitely moved away from those kind of a bit more, but I still do read the occasional one, and I do enjoy them when I read them. But adult is definitely my main age that I read. And for star rating, you can see here I went with some pretty like pastel light colors, and I had over 60 5-star reads, which is phenomenal. And then it really does go like 5, 4.5, 4, 3.5, etc. So I rate a lot of books that I read quite highly, which is a very good thing because that means I'm enjoying what I'm reading. But I feel like I might not be the strictest, so maybe I should change that in 2026. But this is the chart. Now for the format that I read these books in, I read physical and ebooks. And I used to read definitely majority physical. This year, as you can see, it was barely over 50% to the physical books, with 51.8% and 48.2% for digital/ebooks. And that is definitely very different for me. I'm so used to reading mostly physical books, but this year I had a Kindle for the entire year, and I just really read a lot through that, so it was more evenly split. And I'm very curious to see what it will be like in 2026. Now here is a chart of the months and how many books I read in each month. I'm not going to really go over this. You can see on the chart here. If you want to see it in more detail or like zoom in, you can always pause this video. Now on to spice scale. So I rate all the romances I read on a spice scale of how steamy, spicy, kinky I thought the book was. So a 0 is it had no spice at all, and like a 5 is it was hot, like, you know, it was very hot, very explicit. So as you can see, most of my reads fell in the 2 to 3 chili pepper range, but I did have quite a lot of 3.5 to 4 and 4.5 to 5, and then some 0.5 to 1.5, and a couple 0 spices, like 0 spice in books. But here's the scale. You can definitely tell I am a spice lover when it comes to my romances. So I feel like that's definitely reflected in this graph. And here are the romance subgenres that I read. These include, well, all the subgenres, and then there's an other category, because at first I didn't think I was going to be reading many of those subgenres that I kind of tagged on into other, but it turns out that's my second largest subgenre of romance for the year. So with 43.8%, we have contemporary. With 24.1%, we have other. At 18.8%, we have dark. And then you can see romantasy and romantic suspense. There are a bit smaller of chunks. Here is my romance trope chart, and I could not fit nearly all the tropes that I tracked this year on this chart. I track a ton of tropes and romances of when I'm reading them and how many books per trope, but they would not all fit on this chart as it is. Some of these don't have a label on them because they're too small of a section. I think everything on here has 8 or more books I read with that trope this past year, and there were other tropes that I tracked and read for, but they had less than 8 books total, so they did not make it onto this this pie chart. And so that is why there are some tropes that you might think are missing. And in 2026, I've set up my reading journal to track definitely even more tropes, like tons and tons more tropes. So we're going to have to think of something different for next year's, but here is the chart. You can pause, take a little look at it in more detail, but I will go over the largest one is Forced Proximity with 18.9%, and then we have Touch Her and You Get Unalived with 15.4%, and then we have the other ones with some smaller percentages. And lastly, we have the book length. So 56.4% of my reads were medium-sized books. I consider medium anywhere between 300 and 500 pages, or more like 304.99 pages. And then 32.9% were small books, under 300 pages. 8.6% were large books, which I consider anywhere between 500 and 599 pages. And then 2.1% were chunky, which is 600 plus pages. And I definitely think this is probably going to stay the same this coming year, but I really did read a lot of books, and if you add up the pages, I feel like I'm very proud. Yes, there's a lot of small books on that I read, but since I read quite a few books in the year, I feel like it still equals quite a lot of pages read, and I'm really happy with this chart because, again, it's just stats. I'm not trying to go for anything in particular, and I really think this does definitely reflect what I read. I read a lot of novellas since getting my Kindle Unlimited subscription back in October. I read so many little novellas, so I definitely feel like that's when the small books skyrocketed. That is going to be it. Those are my stats for my reading in 2025. Let me know what any of your stats are. How many books did you read last year? And if you don't feel like commenting any of that, you can leave a what emoji should we do? How about how about the diamond emoji? And before you guys go, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, turn on post notifications. I'll see y'all next time. Bye, everyone.